At 3:17 that morning, Daniel Mercer woke to 3 knocks coming from inside his bedroom wall. Knock, knock, knock. He didn't move. Then a voice whispered through the plaster, his own voice. "Daniel, whatever you do, don't open the door." Daniel's eyes fixed on the wall. There was no door there when he'd gone to sleep. Now there was. A tall, dark wooden door stood where his wardrobe had been yesterday, complete with an old brass handle and scratches around the lock. And beneath it, something was leaking onto the carpet. Not water. A thin line of black liquid. Daniel reached for his phone. The screen showed 3:17 a.m. Then the knocking came again, 3 times. Except this time it came from the other side of the door. Daniel stepped closer. His phone suddenly buzzed. A new photograph had appeared in his gallery. He hadn't taken it. It showed his bedroom. The same bed, the same wall, the same impossible door. But Daniel was already standing in the photograph. He was facing the camera, and behind him, the door was open. Someone was standing inside it. Daniel zoomed in. The figure was wearing his clothes. His face was turned away. Then the figure in the photograph slowly raised one hand and pointed at the camera. Daniel dropped the phone. The screen cracked against the floor. 3 knocks sounded again. This time, Daniel noticed something that made his stomach tighten. The knocks weren't coming from the door. They were coming from inside the room behind him. He turned. Nothing. When he looked back, the brass handle was slowly turning. Daniel whispered, "Who's there?" The handle stopped. A voice answered from behind the door. His own voice. "That's what I was afraid you'd ask." Daniel stumbled backwards. The voice continued. "Listen to me. The door doesn't lead anywhere." A pause. "It leads to Yah-Wen." The ha. Handle began turning again, and from the other side came a final whisper, "Daniel, I'm you." Then the door opened by itself, and Daniel saw himself standing on the other side, older, bleeding, terrified, and holding a photograph of Daniel asleep in bed. The date written across the photograph was 27 October 1987. Daniel looked at the date, then at the man wearing his face. The man whispered, "Close it." Behind him, something moved in the darkness. "Before she sees you." The words barely left the man's mouth before something shifted in the darkness behind him. Daniel grabbed the brass handle. He pulled the door towards himself. It slammed shut. He stumbled backwards and hit the edge of his bed. For several seconds, he could hear nothing except his own breathing. Then he looked at the wall. The door was gone. There was only white plaster. Daniel stood there, frozen. His phone was still on the carpet. He picked it up with shaking hands. The photograph was gone. He checked again. Nothing. Not even in the recently deleted folder. Daniel looked at the clock. 3:19 a.m. 2 minutes. That was all. He spent the rest of the night sitting on the edge of his bed with every light switched on. At 7:42, he called Mr. Collins. The landlord answered on the 4th ring. "Hello? You need to come here." A pause. "Why?" "The door's gone." Silence. Then Collins asked quietly, "Did you open it?" Daniel looked at the wall. "Yes." Collins exhaled. "Then it started." "What has started?" "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. Daniel didn't like the sound of that. 20 minutes later, Collins entered the flat and went straight to the bedroom. He stared at the wall. "Tell me exactly what happened." Daniel told him. Every detail. The older version of himself. The photograph. The date. The voice. When Daniel finished, Collins remained silent. Finally, he said, "You saw the other side." "What does that mean?" Collins looked at him. "It means you were lucky." "Lucky?" "You closed it." Daniel stepped closer. "Who was the woman?" Collins' expression tightened. "I don't know." "You're lying." Collins didn't answer. Then 3 soft knocks came from inside the wall. Both men turned. Knock, knock, knock. Collins whispered, "Don't touch it." The plaster suddenly cracked. A thin black line apop paired across the wall. Daniel stepped back. The line widened. A brass handle slowly pushed through the paint. Collins grabbed Daniel's arm. "Don't open it." But this time, Daniel heard something from the other side. A woman's voice. Soft, almost amused. "Daniel." Collins went completely pale. The voice continued. "I'm glad you came back." The door appeared, and this time, it was already unlocked. Daniel stared at the brass handle. Mr. Collins kept hold of his arm. "Don't." Daniel looked at him. "You've heard her before." Collins didn't answer. "Who is she?" "I said I don't know." "You're a terrible liar." Collins released him and stepped towards the door. His hand hovered over the handle, then he pulled it away. "You think this is the first time I've seen it?" Daniel said nothing. Collins looked exhausted. "My brother lived in this building in 1998. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "What happened to him?" "He opened the door." A faint knock came from behind it. Collins continued. "He walked through. 3 days later, he came back." Daniel frowned. "Then what's the problem?" Collins looked directly at him. "He wasn't my brother anymore." Before Daniel could respond, the door swung open. Cold air swept through the bedroom. Beyond it was the entrance hall of the building. But the wallpaper was different. The lights were older. The brass postbox numbers hadn't been replaced. Daniel stepped closer. A newspaper lay on the floor. He could see the date clearly. October 1998. Then someone walked past the hallway. A teenage boy. Daniel recognized him immediately. Collins did too. His face drained of color. "My brother." The boy stopped. He slowly turned towards the open doorway. Daniel instinctively stepped back. The boy's eyes fixed on him. Then he smiled. Not like someone surprised to see a stranger, like someone who had been waiting. He raised one finger to his lips. "Don't tell him," he whispered. Daniel glanced at Collins. "Tell me what?" The boy pointed behind Daniel. Daniel turned. Nothing. When he looked back, the hallway was empty. The door slammed shut. Collins grabbed his coat. "We're leaving." Daniel blocked the doorway. "No. Move. You've known about this for years." "I know enough to stay alive." Daniel pulled out his phone. "I found something." He showed Collins the photographs he'd taken earlier. One image showed the wall before the door appeared. Another showed the door. But in the corner of the second photograph was something Daniel hadn't noticed. A reflection in the brass handle. A woman's face. Collins stared at it, then whispered a name. "Eleanor." Daniel looked up. "Who is Eleanor?" Collins didn't answer. From inside the bedroom came 3 slow knocks, then a woman's voice. "Ask him what happened in 1987. Collins closed his eyes, and Daniel realized something worse than the door had appeared. Someone on the other side knew exactly what Collins had been hiding. Daniel turned towards him. "What happened in 1987? Collins stared at the bedroom wall. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he walked to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and left it untouched. "Eleanor Vale," he said. "Who was she?" "A 17-year-old girl. She lived here with her mother." "In this building?" "4th floor, flat 4B. Daniel frowned. "There isn't a 4B. There wasn't supposed to be. Daniel felt a chill run through him. Collins continued. Eleanor disappeared in October 1987. No body, no note, no explanation. The police searched the building twice. And the door? Collins looked at him. She said it appeared in her bedroom. Daniel's mouth went dry. What did she see? She told people it opened onto different places, different years, sometimes places she'd never been. Did anyone believe her? No, except you. I was 12. Collins looked towards the wall. My father was the building manager. He was here the night Eleanor disappeared. What happened? He heard her screaming. Daniel waited. And? He opened her bedroom door. Collins swallowed. She was standing in front of the wall. There was a door behind her. Daniel stepped closer. What was she doing? Talking to someone? Who? Collins' eyes moved towards Daniel. Her own voice. Silence filled the kitchen. Then the bedroom door appeared again. No sound. No warning. Just suddenly there. Daniel approached it. Collins didn't stop him this time. Daniel placed his hand on the brass handle. It was warm. He opened the door. A small Victorian bedroom stood beyond it. A teenage girl was sitting on the floor beside the bed. She slowly raised her head. Daniel recognized her from the photograph. Eleanor. She looked exactly 17. Her eyes widened. You're late. Daniel froze. Do you know me? Eleanor stood. I've been waiting for you. Why? She looked past him towards the empty corridor. Because you opened it. I didn't know what it was. You weren't supposed to. Daniel stepped inside. The room smelled of dust, old books, and something metallic. On the wall were dozens of photographs. Different apartments, different streets, different years. But every photograph contained the same wooden door. Daniel picked one up. It showed his own bedroom. The date underneath read, 27 October 1987. Daniel stared at it. That's impossible. Eleanor shook her head. No. She pointed towards the photograph. That is what hasn't happened yet. Daniel slowly looked back at her. Eleanor's voice dropped to a whisper. The door doesn't show the past, Daniel. She looked towards the doorway. It shows what happens when you try to change it. This story is a work of fiction. The characters, apartment building, supernatural events, and locations depicted are imaginary and have been created solely for entertainment. The story is set in Kentish Town, London, and references the year 1987, a real period in British history. While the narrative may draw atmospheric inspiration from the social and historical character of London during that era, the events involving the mysterious door, Eleanor Vale, Daniel Mercer, and the supernatural occurrences are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to real people, properties, organizations, or events is purely coincidental. The story does not claim that any supernatural incident described here actually occurred. The door doesn't show the past, Daniel. Eleanor's eyes stayed on the photograph. It shows what happens when you try to change it. Daniel stared at her. Then show me. Eleanor hesitated. You won't like what you find. I've already seen myself standing in this doorway. I've seen a photograph dated 1987. I'm past liking things. Eleanor walked towards the door. Then don't touch anything. She opened it. Daniel stepped through. The Victorian bedroom vanished. He was standing in the hallway of his childhood home. The wallpaper, the old carpet, the framed photograph of his parents beside the stairs. Daniel stopped breathing. From downstairs came shouting. His father's voice. Then his own younger voice. Daniel moved towards the staircase. Dad, just go. His younger voice echoed through the house. Daniel froze. He remembered this night. At least, he thought he did. His father had left after an argument. 20 minutes later, there had been a phone call. A crash. A hospital. A death Daniel had spent years calling an accident. but now he could hear something he'd forgotten. His father shouted, "You don't get to decide what happens to me!" Daniel's younger voice answered, "Then get out!" A door slammed downstairs. Daniel hurried down the stairs. He saw his father grab his car keys. Then his younger self appeared in the hallway. The two stared at each other. Daniel watched helplessly. His father walked towards the front door, then stopped. He looked back. "You'll regret saying that." The door opened. He left. Daniel rushed after him. "Dad!" His younger self ran to the window. Outside, headlights disappeared into the rain. Daniel's chest tightened. He remembered the next part. The phone call, the police, the hospital. But then something changed. A figure appeared behind his younger self. "A woman, Eleanor. She went outside," whispered something into his ear. Daniel spun around. Eleanor was standing beside him in the present. "I never said that." Daniel stared at her. "You were here." "No." "Then who was she?" Eleanor's face changed. "I don't know." The front door downstairs suddenly opened. Daniel's dead father walked back inside, except his face was wrong. His eyes were fixed directly on Daniel. "You shouldn't have come back," he said. Daniel stepped backwards. Eleanor grabbed his wrist. "Run!" The hallway lights went out. Daniel heard footsteps rushing towards them. He turned towards the doorway. His childhood home was disappearing. The walls were peeling away. The carpet became bare floorboards. Eleanor pulled him through the door. Daniel fell onto his bedroom carpet. The door slammed behind him. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Eleanor whispered, "That wasn't your memory." Daniel looked at her. "What was it?" She stared at the door. "Something learned how to wear it?" Daniel pushed himself off the carpet. "What does that mean?" Eleanor didn't answer. The door behind her began to tremble. 3 knocks came from the other side. Eleanor stepped away. "It knows you're frightened." Daniel stared at her. "You said the door shows possible futures." "It does." "Then what was that thing?" "Something else." The handle turned. Eleanor grabbed Daniel's arm. "Don't let it see you." The door opened. Daniel's apartment appeared on the other side, exactly as it was now. Except someone was already standing inside. Daniel, older than him by perhaps 15 years. A scar ran from his eyebrow to his cheek. His clothes were soaked. He looked exhausted, and he was holding a blood-stained photograph. Older Daniel stared at the younger version of himself. "Oh God." Daniel stepped closer. "You're me." Older Daniel shook his head. "Not anymore." "What happened to you? You kept opening the door." Daniel looked at Eleanor. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Older Daniel pointed at her. "She wants you to believe she needs your help." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Don't listen to him." Older Daniel laughed bitterly. "You said the same thing to me." Daniel stepped between them. "Tell me the truth." Older Daniel looked at him. "The door doesn't create different futures." He raised the photograph. "It creates replacements." Daniel frowned. "What replacements?" "Every time you try to change something, the door takes the version of you that belongs there and sends another one back." Daniel stared at him. "Then who are you?" Older Daniel looked towards the bedroom wall. "I opened the door because I wanted my father alive." His voice cracked. "I got what I wanted." Daniel waited. "Then my life started changing. Friends disappeared. Memories changed. People I loved stopped recognizing me." He looked at Eleanor. Because something else was coming through." Eleanor stepped forward. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Older Daniel pointed towards the doorway. "She's been trying to get out since 1987. Daniel's stomach tightened. "Why?" Older Daniel lowered his voice. "Because she isn't Eleanor." Silence. Eleanor's face went completely still. Daniel looked at her. "Who are you?" For the first time, Eleanor smiled. Not nervously, not sadly, almost warmly. "You've asked the wrong question." The lights flickered. Behind Eleanor, another figure appeared in the hallway. A young Daniel. Then another. Then another. All of them standing silently. Older Daniel grabbed Daniel's shoulder. "Close the door." Daniel reached for the handle. Eleanor suddenly whispered, "If you close it now, your father dies again." Daniel froze. Older. Daniel shouted, "Don't listen to her!" Eleanor looked directly at Daniel. "Open it." Her smile disappeared. "And I'll show you the moment you can change everything." Daniel's hand remained on the brass handle. Behind him, older Daniel shouted, "She's lying!" Eleanor didn't look at him. "She has been lying since 1987. Daniel turned towards her. "Then why do you know about my father?" Eleanor's expression softened. "Because I've seen what happens when you lose him." The door began to shake beneath Daniel's hand. A thin crack appeared across the wooden frame. Then came the 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel pulled the door open. He was standing outside his childhood home again. Rain hammered the pavement. His father's car was parked beside the curb. Daniel saw his younger self standing at the front door, but this time, Eleanor wasn't there. His father was holding the car keys. Daniel stepped forward. "Dad!" His father couldn't hear him. Daniel reached for him. His hand passed straight through his shoulder. He turned towards Eleanor. "What am I supposed to change?" "Nothing." Daniel stared at her. "You said I could save him. I said you could change everything." She pointed towards his younger self. "Go back." Daniel understood. The door wasn't asking him to change his father's decision. It wanted him to change his own. He walked towards his younger self. The younger Daniel was crying. His father was about to leave. Daniel crouched beside himself. "Don't tell him to go." The younger boy looked directly at him. For one impossible second, their eyes met. "You're me." Daniel nodded. "Listen carefully." His younger self wiped his face. "What do I do?" Daniel looked at his father. "Let him leave." The boy shook his head. "But he'll die." Daniel's throat tightened. "I know." "Then why?" "Because if you stop him, something worse comes through." Behind them, the front door slowly opened. Eleanor stood outside. But now Daniel could see what she really was. Her face flickers, between different ages. 17, 30, 70, then something without a face at all. Daniel stepped backwards. "You're not Eleanor." She smiled. "I was." The house began to shake. His father's car engine started outside. Eleanor stepped through the doorway. "If you accept what happened, I disappear." Daniel looked at her. "And if I don't?" "You become me." The door behind Daniel began closing. He grabbed his younger self's hand. "Don't open it." The boy nodded. Eleanor screamed. The sound wasn't human. Daniel pulled his younger self away as the doorway collapsed. The last thing he saw was his father driving into the rain. Then darkness swallowed everything. Daniel opened his eyes on his bedroom floor. Mara was kneeling beside him. "Daniel!" He tried to speak. Then he heard it. 3 knocks, not from the wall, from inside his wardrobe. Mara slowly turned towards it. The wardrobe door began to open. And behind it stood Eleanor. Mara stumbled backwards. Daniel pushed himself up from the floor. "Stay behind me." Eleanor stepped out of the wardrobe. She looked 17 again. For a moment she seemed almost ordinary. Then she smiled. "You finally understand." Daniel stared at her. "You're not Eleanor." Her smile faded. "She was the first one." "Where is she?" "Gone." Mara looked at Daniel. "What is she talking about?" Daniel didn't answer. The wardrobe door slammed shut behind Eleanor. The bedroom lights flickered. Then every door in the flat opened at once. The bathroom, the kitchen, the front door. And behind each one was somewhere else. A railway platform, a rainy street, Daniel's childhood home, the Victorian hallway. And finally, a dark room where dozens of versions of Daniel stood silently watching them. Mara grabbed Daniel's hand. "We need to leave." Daniel looked at the impossible doorways. "We can't." "Why not?" "Because this thing doesn't need the flat anymore." Eleanor turned towards Mara. "It needs someone who will open the final door." Mara's eyes narrowed. "Why me?" Eleanor smiled. "Because Daniel won't do it." A photograph dropped onto the carpet. Daniel picked it up. It showed the three of them standing outside the building. Daniel. Mara. Eleanor. At the bottom was a date. 27 October 1987. Mara stared at it. "That's impossible." Daniel looked closer. On the back, someone had written, "The first door is always the hardest to close." A violent bang shook the bedroom wall. Then another. The white plaster began splitting apart. Daniel grabbed Mara. "Run." They reached the hallway, but the front door had disappeared. In its place stood the wooden door. Daniel stopped. Eleanor's voice came from behind them. "You can't run from a door that follows you." Daniel turned. She was standing at the end of the hallway. Her face was changing rapidly. Young, old Daniel, Eleanor, then nothing. Daniel looked at Mara. "Whatever happens, don't answer if it speaks in my voice." The door handle began turning. Mara whispered, "Daniel?" "Don't." The door opened. Darkness filled the doorway. Then a voice came from inside. Daniel's voice. "Please." Mara reached for the handle. Daniel caught her wrist. "No." The voice changed. It became Mara's. "Please, Daniel." She froze. Then came 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel shut his eyes. "It's not real." The voice whispered, "Then why do you remember me?" Daniel opened his eyes. Eleanor was gone. The hallway was empty. The wooden door slowly began disappearing. For the first time, there was silence. Daniel and Mara stood completely still. Then Daniel's phone vibrated. A photograph had appeared on the screen. It showed the building from across the street. Daniel zoomed in. His face went pale. The photograph showed him and Mara standing at the window. But there was someone else behind them. A girl, 17 years old, Eleanor. And beneath the photograph was one sentence. "You closed the door." Daniel looked towards the bedroom. The wall was completely normal. Then, knock, knock, knock. Mara whispered, "Daniel." A brass handle slowly pushed outward through the white paint. Daniel didn't move. The handle turned, and from inside the wall his own voice whispered, "Now open it."